All right, what's up, guys? Welcome back to Technique Matters. So today we're going to talk about the bench press, and following, the format of our series of videos, we're just going to go through Adam's bench press. We're going to talk about, the start, the middle, the end, and any sort of developments for this block. All right, what's up, guys? I have Adam here with me today. So, following this sort of format of our videos that we're gonna do for this few weeks, we're gonna talk about Adam's bench press. We're gonna go through some of the ideas, and we'll try to link it back to some of the things that we've been talking about in terms of, the little tips and tricks that we've been giving you for bench press, in regard to, the stuff that you've seen on Technique Matters. So, Adam, do you want to tell us kind of how bench press has been like for you this block, and maybe give us some sort of context of how you started, how things developed, and what you realized by the end of it.
Yep. Hey guys, so this block here was more focused on hypertrophy and volume. So in a bench standpoint, it's a little less specific, but I don't like to, get distracted by these kind of blocks and become complacent because it's only volume and it's not really strength focused. I think it's important to, even in these blocks, to try and hone in on those skills and still develop those skills rather than thinking of trying to get bigger and getting volume in. So in these blocks, I still highly focus on my technique, really hone in weak points as well. Even though this block wasn't so much designed to target the weak points, it was more of trying to get more range of motion and work, less specific range of motions. So I had 3 bench days this block. I had my main bench day, I had my second main bench day, and then I had a bench day that was kind of like, it was floor press, but I started off with floor press and I changed it up during the block because of convenience and things that are happening in my life, that it just made it a bit easier to do upper body work from home rather than having to go to the gym and do bench press. So to kind of go off topic a little bit, and that's the convenience of having a less focused block and not really having a comp coming up and being able to be flexible with training when we have no meet coming up. So I think that's important to have that flexibility, and then when we get closer to a meet, then we can start to be more focused and it will become a little less flexible. So as I said, going back to my bench days, I had my competition main bench. My second bench was Duffalo bar bench. I wanted to experiment with the Duffalo bar bench because it just kind of feels different with the range of motions. I feel like I get a different feeling in my lats going into the chest position and feel like I can load my lats and triceps differently. So I really wanted to experiment with that. And then the third day was, as I said, it was floor press, but I changed that to weighted dips. And being said, I enjoy weighted dips as well. With this block, it gave me a couple of things to work on and really just dial these things in going through the block. There was a couple of cues I was using, or I am still using actually, is instead of thinking of rowing the bar to my chest, I think of, with my hands, I've been thinking of rowing the bar to my chest with my elbows, being, focused on keeping the shoulders depressed and really maintaining that shoulder depression and then rowing that bar to my chest. And I find that I can get more retraction in that way. And I think that'd be a useful cue for people if you're struggling to feel that shoulder retraction. And a good cue that JJ has told me as well is not to try and focus on shoulder retraction so much, but if you focus on shoulder depression more, and you'll retract naturally. So I found that I can retract more naturally thinking of, rowing the bar to my chest with my elbows. So that's a useful cue if you want to use that. So that's one thing that I have been using this whole block, and I'm really finding that it's really changed my bench. In a strength standpoint, being said that I've been in a volume block, I haven't made a huge strength gains, but I feel like I made a massive technical gains throughout this block, especially for reps of 6. a little bit of context again. I've had shoulder surgery. I've had wrist surgery, a couple of accidents when I was younger. And I've always struggled with stability when it came to high rep work, especially with intensity. And I found that I've really improved in that area, especially with, heavier loads. I was able to maintain more stability throughout the block. It wasn't perfect at the start of the block, but yeah, that retraction cue and rowing the bar to my chest really helped with that stability standpoint.
So maybe I'll just look at like week 1 and then compare that against your week 6 and see if we can see any sort of differences across it. So did you have anything particular that you noticed from just watching yourself do this that you felt changed since then?
So you see the right shoulder. So what I was saying before, I had shoulder issues and wrist issues, and it's been my whole right arm. So right wrist, right shoulder, and you'll see this start to slide out a bit. Like it'll start
So
to
we're
flare a
looking
bit
at the
more.
shoulder here.
Yeah, it'll start to flare more.
So that's week 2. Yeah, so we can definitely see a big difference in terms of just how what happened to the video? But I mean, just looking at those few reps, we can see a big difference just from the first 2 reps alone. And this is 120. No, this is 132 as well. Yeah,
No, it's
128.
128.
So you can already see a difference there already, just from those first 2 reps, as compared to this one, which was your end of block, which is a lot smoother as well, just from the setup. And yeah. So anything you wanna say about these 2 bench presses, just comparing the
Yeah,
2?
you can definitely see a lot more lat engagement. You can see the lats,
Mm.
coming out of the shirt.
This
There, you
area.
can see it's really activated through here. You can see that you can always look at what I do when I coach my athletes. I look at the elbow and the humerus here and see what that's doing throughout the bench press. And if you start to see that slide up the bench, you'll see it flare a bit more and see that elbows kind of wiggle a bit. That's when you see shoulder instability.
Mm. Yep.
So
So I think
you'll
one of the
see
things
that.
that I can see from this video, the one on week 2, is even the descent itself, even though it's 5 kilos lighter, it's looking, or it's very sort of unstable already. So was this before I told you about the depression thing, or was it um this was before, right? Or was it
Yeah.
after? So you can see that when you're coming down, it's already starting to get super unstable.
Yeah.
Right, the elbow's already doing like this sort of like weird flaring movement on the descent.
Yeah.
So I think this is one of the things that we talked about. Uh, I think Clinton, we made a video with Clinton about not over retracting on the bench press, because what happens is you actually imagine this is your shoulder blade and then this is your arm. If you start to retract it, and at some point it does this in the joint, so it kind of glides on the joint itself, which makes the arm really unstable when you have a weight in your hand. So this is one of the things that we talked about on TM as well. Make sure that you are setting up with depression and just using your legs to kind of set the shoulders, rather than thinking of, squeezing really hard with your lats or squeezing really hard with your rhomboids as well.
When I started benching and people were telling me to retract my bench, that is a lot harder to do rather than putting your shoulders into depression. I think trying to retract, thinking so much of retraction is just, it's personally, I found that is just a lot harder to do. Depression, thinking of pulling your shoulders away from your ears, it's a lot easier. And as I said before, if you have your shoulders set in the right position and you pull down into the bench press, you automatically retract anyway. And then you can maybe implement more retraction in that position if you can feel it out. But to go straight to the retraction cue for most people, especially beginners, it's not gonna work, and it will get confusing, and it's hard to feel, especially when you're in full extension.
Do you think that just changing the way you approach the bench press or changing your sort of idea of how to execute it helped a lot in this block, or was it something that you've always been like, oh, how do I try to create more stability, or is that something you've always struggled with, considering you had the shoulder injuries and stuff?
I've always struggled with my right shoulder staying stable, and just recently with that elbow cue for me, that's been really helping a lot. Been doing sixes, so the intensity is still quite low in a load standpoint, but when it comes to fatiguing later in the set, I'm able to hold position more. It'll be interested to see how it holds up going into next block and the next block after with heavier loads. I think it's been a good strategy in a way, kind of work on that with lower intensities, and then turn up that dial with the load as well, and then trying to maintain that. Yeah, it's still early stages with that cue with the elbow. I've always, for years I've been trying to hold shoulder depression, but rowing and guiding that bar down with my elbows has really helped with the the lat engagement and the shoulder stability. So yeah, to bring it back, I'll be interested to see how it goes in subsequent blocks.
Cool. So we have a video here of the left side. So maybe it'll just give you a little bit of comparison as to what we're seeing. So that left side definitely looks a lot smoother. Um, just from looking at this video alone, right?
Yeah.
You can see that the elbow is just tracking a lot smoother and stuff. Do you find that, like, in terms of, does that feel like normal to you, or does it feel a little bit asymmetrical at times?
At times it does, especially through a sticking point. Also with my wrist, that's the most extension I can get from my right wrist compared to my left. Like I can fully extend. So I have that more range of motion, more room for error, so to speak. If you misgroove a little bit, I can have that mobility to bring it back. Not saying that you should bench like that, but it's definitely helpful to have that mobility. It's not, and also it's not that extension as well. It's rotation. So I'm having trouble having extension and rotating. So I can definitely feel it when it's off. When I press it, I'm unable to push it in a certain direction compared to how my left side can push. So yeah.
Do you feel like that sort of, if you've lost the line, it's just like instantly you don't have any sort of any pressing power, or and it's just like all left side from that point on?
It's more bar path direction.
Mm.
So if you want to, you think of pressing off the chest and you're pushing back past that sticking point, and if it's in the wrong line, that right side will want to push vertically. This left side wants to push back. So I have to set the bar differently in my hand on my right side to make sure it pushes in the right direction, which has been really tricky, and it's been taking a lot of time to figure out. Yeah, to answer your question, yes, definitely feel it when the line is off, the touch point's off, or the direction of the bar off the chest is wrong.
It's quite interesting that you talked about the wrist position and setting up right, because I think one of the things that you did very successfully, or you credited to sort of improvements in your bench press, at least recently, was the Duffalo bench. So do you think that, because the bar itself is shaped slightly differently, right? Do you think that really helped to kind of fix your position, or what did it do for you? Because I know you spoke to me about this in the gym, about how it's actually correcting your line, which to me, maybe because the way I bench press and stuff, it's hard for me to imagine, because first of all, the bar is shaped differently, you hold the bar differently, the setup and everything. It's just such a different implement for me that I would like to hear sort of like your thoughts around it, and how you think that has a carryover to your competition bench press, and maybe how you use it for your own lifters as well.
So with this Duffalo bar bench, I found with it, as I said at the start, I found that I got more loading to the lats and triceps. Obviously, there's a little bit more range of motion because the bar's, bent over your chest. I don't actually find it that much harder, like in regards to load. Even though you see I'm doing touch and go over tens, I haven't done any heavier intensity stuff with this yet. But I also find that it kind of punishes you if the bar path is wrong off the chest. So the way the load, I don't know if anyone's experienced squatting with the duffalo bar, but if you stand a little bit differently, it just wants to throw you on one side or the other. That's what it's like in your hands as well. If you press a little too vertically, it's going to throw you forward a little bit. So you will have to automatically fight against it to pull it back. And that's one thing I found, helpful with this is be more disciplined with that bar path. This forces you to be more disciplined with the bar path. The bench is not that hard if you're focused on that bar path. But if you're lose focus and you just want to bang it off your chest and just rep it out, you're going to have a hard time with it. I like it. My shoulders didn't get too beat up. I think I'll use it again. No, I'll be interested to use it again with some higher intensities. I don't know how that'll go with shoulders. I'll probably like to experience with, I wouldn't say higher intensities, middle range intensities. It might be nice, but yeah, it'd be a nice little experiment. So yeah, I think if you have one available, it's definitely worth experimenting for a few weeks and see how it goes. I like to have some variation in my training, washes out that trying to do the same stimulus all the time and just, changes things up. And it kind of makes training fun in a way as well. In my opinion, I like to change things up every now and again. Actually, but one thing to be aware of when benching with this is that it wants, especially in a Eleiko rack, it wants to roll down one side, okay? Especially when you re-rack. I have pinched my hand before, so that's one thing to be aware of, just to make sure you place it there and maybe even have a spotter, someone pull the bar in the rack for you. But yeah, that's it.
Yeah, because just looking at this video alone, that elbow position just looks so smooth. Like even on the high rep stuff, and this is 115, if I'm not wrong. Yeah, so 115 is just moving for real easy set of 10, right?
10.
Or is it 12? Yeah. So even on that last rep, your elbow position is still pretty smooth as compared to previous videos that we've seen, where it kind of starts to get a little bit messy nearing the end of the set. So something like here. So I think I really like what you said about maintaining discipline in terms of, going into variations or going into this whole training period, even because you said that it's a volume phase, right? And people just tend to think of not being very specific and letting themselves kind of be complacent or have like some sort of mentality where, oh, it's just high reps anyway, it doesn't really matter. But obviously that's not the kind of mindset that we want to go into training, because every session, so like a session to practice good technique, right? So yeah, I think those are some really key points that you talked about. Cool. So, and how did you feel about, because it's really interesting that what you're doing essentially one specific competition day, right? And even then it's like sets of 6. So how specific can you actually be? And then you're doing a second day, which is Duffalo tens, and then a third day, which is just more traditional, more sort of like bodybuilding style dips and stuff. So I guess the question for, we've looked at your competition bench, we've looked at your Duffalo bench, and then maybe talk a little bit about your day 3, your upper body on dips and stuff, because it's really interesting that you went to picking dips, because I would imagine at least some people have a fear of oh, I'm not going to be specific and I shouldn't train. And oh, for the other thing for me as well, hearing that is, you mentioned that you had a shoulder injury and a wrist injury. So, I mean, dips would be kind of like one of the last kind of exercises that I would think, someone like that has your history would want to pick. So maybe talk us through a little bit about that.
Yeah, cool. The reason why I picked dips is I just enjoy doing them. Before powerlifting, I did a lot of GPP work. So, non-directional training, more of just being generally fit in all different standpoints, including running and weightlifting, kind of like CrossFit in a way, but not so much, doing WODs and all that sort of stuff, being more just well-rounded. Because, growing up, I've played many different sports, and for me, fitness and well-being and doing something has just always been a big part of my life. So dips is just the background before powerlifting. I did a lot of dips for a few years. I did a lot of weighted pull-ups because I just love doing weighted pull-ups. These are a little less specific towards powerlifting, but more of just like for the soul, so to speak. So, yep. So I did weighted dips. I find, I would find some benefits out of it too. You target the triceps, target the lockout muscles. You hit the pecs differently as well. So it's good to hit your muscles from a different range of motion. We're so specific hitting bench press and you low bar back squat and your deadlifts, why not change it up a little bit and target your muscles in a different standpoint for a bit, give your shoulders a bit of a rest from that certain range of motions and all that sort of stuff. I think it's important as well for longevity, especially when you don't have a meet coming up and all that sort of stuff. Why not try some new things? Why not try some new exercises? It doesn't have to be so much specific to powerlifting. Maybe find some things that you enjoy, even if if you're with your coach and you're not doing, you're not having a meet coming up, maybe have that conversation with them, that maybe add some things in your program that you want to through that time where, things are not that important. So going back to that, yeah, that's why I chose weighted dips. I chose inverted rows. I like inverted rows as well. I've got a TRX at home. I've got a lat pull down machine at my condo. So I've been hitting that as well and just getting a lot of variation.
So yeah, I think one of the things that is kind of coming up to me that is really interesting is that, obviously we haven't sort of planned these calls and we're just talking through your bench press and stuff. But just one of the things that I think Clinton mentioned last week as well, and I guess I want to throw the same question to you, is I think it's very easy in your position, right? Because bench press is kind of like relative to your other lifts are a bit weaker. Do you feel like you have a certain leaning towards, oh, I need to actually push it a bit harder and therefore I need to do all of these things? Whereas your mentality is not like that. You're just more like, okay, this is something I need to work on. I need to train in a way that's sustainable for me. Whereas I think a lot of, I would say maybe younger lifters will fall into the trap of being, okay, like my competitors are doing this, like I need to keep up, and therefore I need to do all the specificity, all the volume, and all the intensity all at the same time, not realizing that people like Clinton and yourself are, doing training that, doesn't really look quote unquote that good on Instagram. It's not hyper specific, it's not hyper intense, but you're still finding a way to progress and enjoy it, and you don't have a sort of more popular way of progressing training. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think, through my years of strength training, including powerlifting as well, I've been strength training for a while now, a decade and a half, and not including all the sports I've played. I've played sports, did some martial arts and all that sort of stuff growing up from a very young age. So I've been active for 30 plus years. And whenever, I've got into strength training and whenever I took myself a little less seriously, I still took training seriously, but taking, not so focused on, getting my SBD up and dial in, doing all specific work and all that sort of stuff. Whenever I took my focus away and trying to enjoy the process, I've made more progress doing that. And that's just my own experience. I'm not saying that everyone should do that. I think just personally for me, that's been working. And in a longevity standpoint, things get stale if you do the same thing over and over and over again. It's going to get stale. You're going to get burnt out. You're going to get over it. From my opinion, you do it long enough, you will get sick of it. So I think it's important to have some variation in training, especially in points where it's not that important. Still explore, still have a focus on a few things, and also have a focus on like just, being a little bit more flexible with things. Enjoy yourself a little bit. Because from my experience when, competing at IPF Worlds, leading up to the IPF Worlds and all that, 3 months, 4 months before that, that's just my life. That is my nutrition, my diet, my training, my sleep, my social life, everything is just dialed in and focused for that. So if you're dialed in and focused like that 24/7, you're going to get burnt out, because by the time I finish IPF Worlds and you experienced it too when we finished coaching and finished competing and stuff. We're like, we don't want to talk about powerlifting. Let's go get a drink and enjoy ourselves.
Yeah.
Um,
No, because it's really interesting that you said that, because I remember when you first came to Singapore, and then I think it was like 6 months, right? You hadn't like even experienced like local culture, or like you
yeah,
haven't like eaten out with us or anything, because you were just like, I've got this competition, and then I've got like a little bit of a break, and then I've got this other competition. So I've seen how Adam is like in terms of his focus and how directed he can be. And I think that if you just I guess it's for the lifters that are watching this out there, if you're just kind of like operating at this quote unquote at this high, right, and you never come back down, then your normal is, or your peak is going to be even lower than you think it is, because obviously you can be switched on all the time, but having the ability to sort of switch off will allow you to sort of switch on harder. So I think it's it's not so much about, oh, I got to be 100% like 200% of the time. It's more like, can I be in this, can I move between going with like 30% to like 100%, and can I just sort of fluctuate between those places so that when I need to, my 100% is really really good quality, as opposed to being like my 80% all the time is the highest that I can physically go,
yeah.
right?
I think it's important to put yourself in that balance line. It's not so much going like, oh, you're further away from competition. Don't think about powerlifting. I'm not saying that. I'm
Yeah.
saying that find that balance that you can still enjoy yourself. You can still train hard. You can still have social gatherings and all that sort of stuff. And especially with me now, I've got a kid. I can spend more time with the family and stuff. So it's very important that I balance things out, kind of. I haven't competed since becoming a dad, so that'll be interesting as well. But I've had this conversation with my coach before. We're not we're not on $1 million contracts, so just make sure that you got that balance, and think of that longevity, because powerlifting is a sport you can compete for the rest of your life. And I've been stuck in that trap before, of thinking of like, I need to be here in 3 months, I need to be here in 6 months, I need to be here in 12 months, and not thinking of the big picture.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to always think of the big picture. How long do you want to live for? How long do you want to do this for? Stop trying to think of, comparing yourself to other guys on IG and trying to get to where they are in 12 months. Like, a lot of people put a lot of years into this, and I think that's an important thing to realize. And if you want to be in this sport for a long time, it's all about balance.
All right, that sounds like a good note to end on. So I hope this video was helpful for you guys. If you guys, like the things that we talk about with regards to bench press, or even some of the things that we've kind of closed on, both videos, in terms of talking about longevity and talking about how to sort of enjoy training a little bit better, make sure send any of your questions in the DMs, share it with your friends, and we hope this is helpful for you, and we'll catch you guys next week.
See you guys.
Peace.